Hey, Vic.
How you doing, Ryan?
Good, thanks. A couple for you. First, what was your reaction when John told you about his decision to step down as GM?
Yeah, he told me about it last week at some point. I know it was something that he was considering for a while, and I'm happy that John's happy about it. John, I think, is really content with the decision and the makeup moving forward for the Broncos, and we're thrilled that John's still going to be available for us to run things by him and get his opinion and his experiences involved in the big decisions here.
As a follow-up, as this search starts, how much more of a role in personnel do you want to be able to take on?
Well, we've had a role in it here, the last 2 years. I think that will depend upon, who we hire, how they envision running the evaluation process. But, in this day and age with the teams changing so much, even year to year, even the really good teams to the teams not with the good records, it behooves you to have the coaches involved, so there's a vision and a consensus of how the player fits.
Thanks.
Hey, Vic. Will the new GM have the leeway to change quarterback or offensive coordinator? Will he be able to come in and say, "Here's my vision," and you switch
Absolutely.
things up?
He's going to be just like all GMs. He's going to be in charge of the 53. He's going to be in charge of the draft. He's going to be in charge of free agency. He's going to be in charge of the salary cap. He's going to be in charge of everything as it relates to building this team and the roster.
Okay, thank you.
Vic, thanks for the time today. I know you don't have a GM yet, so maybe it's a different question, but do you feel more or less secure about your position because of the guy who hired you, and John, where you have obviously a great relationship, is not in that role anymore?
I feel the same. Moving forward, whoever we end up hiring here, I'm sure we'll forge a good relationship. I've had experience over the years, obviously, working with many different general managers. I like to think I'm easy to work with. And I'm sure who we hire will be a guy that's a consensus builder, but ultimately be the guy that makes the final decision as it relates to the roster. And I'm not really concerned about that.
Yeah, Vic, last year at this time, you said your priority was you got to start scoring more points on offense to keep up with the Chiefs, and you did address that in the offseason. Is it flipped a little bit as defense where you got to concentrate because you've got so much age and injury and salary on that side of the ball?
I think we got both sides of the ball that need attention. Obviously we need to be better in the turnover giveaway ratio. We turned it over too much offensively and we didn't get enough defensively. And, other than points on the board, that's the most important stat in determining who wins and loses a football game. Now, we had some unusual games this year. We were +4 the other day and lost the game, and all 4 of them gave us the ball in really good field position, and we were only able to get 10 points out of it. We won a game in New York where we were -3 and they scored on defense. It's rare that happens. So we had some unusual games relates to that, but over the long haul, we need to protect the ball better and we need to get it more on defense.
Next one, Jeff. I think I got a couple of the first one, just in terms of working with a GM, and I'm not talking, a confrontational relationship, but do you need someone who will sort of disagree with you at times or look at things differently?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't think you're ever going to find, and it's never been anywhere I've been, even where it's been successful, that you're never going to find 2 people that agree on everything all the time. And just as long as there's good conversation and a healthy hashing it out and come to a decision for the Denver Broncos that we're all on board with is the important thing.
And then the second is, when you look back on a season beyond X's and O's, do you look at everything you did during the year, how you handled the sideline, or, what were you
Absolutely.
told?
I mean, yeah, we're going to A to Z evaluate everything, and we've already started that. And we're going to study other teams, as many as we can in the time given. And we're going to turn over every stone in an effort to improve.
And then do do you know sort of what the schedule is going to look like for you guys beyond this next round of you can't be in the building?
No, we'll be in the building, I believe, but as everything in this COVID world, everything's fluid. We'll be back in the building in February, actually the last week of January, working as a staff and the personnel staff, hopefully. But as you know, everything's fluid.
Hey, Coach, a couple for you. First, staff-wise, do you expect your staff to return intact as things stand now, or do you anticipate making any changes?
No, I do anticipating returning in full. As always, as things happen in the early part of the offseason, some guys may have some opportunities for advancement. We'll always look at that. But other than that, I'm anticipating the staff back.
And then yesterday, Garrett Bowles said that Jawan James would have to earn the trust back from the offensive line. Just curious, what's his status and where do things stand with Jawan going into the offseason?
Yeah, I've been in touch a couple times with Jawan during the season, and I know he's anxious to get back here and get back in the fold. And anytime you've been out for a year, you got to get yourself back into the mix and earn the respect and trust of everybody moving forward. And I'm sure he'll be able to do that.
Vic, looking back on the season, which players do you think took the biggest steps positively over the course of the 16 games?
I think of Cushionberry at center. He was a guy that constantly got better inch by inch. He never made a big jump one week to the next, but he just kept getting better in small increments. And by the end of the season was playing his best football. And I think after this offseason and he gets to watch himself in cut-ups and getting coached by Mike and Coop, that he'll come back a better player. And I expect him to flourish next year even more so.
Yeah, Vic, you mentioned having had the opportunity to work with a lot of different general managers, and I'm curious what have been the traits that you've seen in some of the ones that have been most successful that you'll kind of advocate for in this search.
The guys that have a vision of what the team should look like in conjunction with the coaching staff and never veering from that vision. It's always easy and sexy sometimes to veer away from what you think is your ultimate blueprint for a team. And sometimes you got to resist that, Then by the same token, maybe there is a chance or two that you might be able to take. But you have to be educated and, they have to be good chances that everybody's on board with.
Next one, Brandon. Coach, how much do you anticipate having input or talking with John about the candidates, especially as it gets narrowed down? Because I guess to my understanding, it's his decision ultimately, but do you think, speak louder and louder if there's somebody or a couple that you're zeroed in on the closer it gets?
Well, I'll be involved in the process. John and Joe will make the ultimate decision, but I'll be involved with the process. And if I feel strong one way or the other, I'll make that known to them.
Next one, George.
Yeah, Vic, you talked Sunday about how much you'd like to see Justin come back. John said yesterday that he hopes to see Vaughn come back. How much will you be in those discussions, and how much will you advocate to have both those guys back?
Well, we'd love to have both of them back. That's obvious. Once we do hire the new general manager, he'll assess our roster, where we're at, how it relates to salary cap, and, he'll have the major say in that moving forward. So I'd like to defer to that, but both of those guys are guys that I would like to have back.
Next one, Kyle.
Vic, I know you just said you anticipate the entire staff to return, but special teams wise, some highlights, some struggles there too. What gives you confidence in Tom McMahon going forward this next season? How would you evaluate his performance this year?
Well, I think, our special teams performance was a lot like our offense and defense. It was choppy at times. And, we allowed too many negative plays to happen against us. In the return game, we had a punt blocked or two that, you can't have. And I have confidence in Tom that he'll get that turned around. Tom was a guy that John recommended highly to me when I first took this job. And we've kept Tom, and he's a tireless worker, very knowledgeable in the kicking game. we just have to, like we do on offense and defense, button up those things to avoid the disastrous plays.
Hey, Coach, where do you think you took the biggest step as a head coach this year in your second year, and where do you want to continue to improve on?
Well, I want to continue to improve in all areas, This year was different, funny, last year after your first year, you would think that last year would be the toughest. A lot of people ask me what happened that you didn't expect, what was rough. And last year, really went smoothly. I couldn't tell anybody anything, man, we had this or that happen. And then this year, when you think it would be easier, with the COVID, the injuries, the constant change of schedules, getting the calls and the text early in the morning every day on the COVID results, made it more distracting and more balls to juggle this year than last year. So hopefully the third year will be the magical year for me where everything goes a little bit smooth again.
Hey, Vic, a couple more from me. You had quarterback this year. You went through a bunch of guys because of injury and performance. When you start looking at the college guys in the draft, is it a tougher position to evaluate now as opposed to 10, 15 years ago?
In some ways it is, in some way it isn't. Obviously, the ball's being thrown much more in college football than it ever has been. Now, a lot of it's the short stuff, but you do see corners in today's college game being challenged more, whether it be short, intermediate, and deep, and having to tackle more. So in that regard, I think somewhat it's easier to evaluate them. On the other hand, the offenses in college aren't always conventional, but a lot of the college offensive schematics are filtering their way into the NFL, as we've all seen. So in some ways it's easier, in some ways it's not, but I think the hard part when you evaluate the corners is, just the talent level they now have to go up against in NFL offenses with all the good receivers in the game, all the good quarterbacks in the game. The passing games are much more efficient, much more well timed out, and it makes it a difficult transition.
And then secondly, has the league given you guys any directions on will the players continue to be tested every so often? Same with the coaches. How will that work out during the offseason?
I'm not exactly sure, except the players that are continued and come in here for treatment will be continued to be tested. We as coaches coming in here will be continued to be tested. I don't think it will be every day, but there will still be a scheduled test a couple times a week.
Thanks.
It's time for a few more. Next one on.
Hey, Vic, Drew Lock has a lot bigger of a body of work to look back on and to study this offseason. Do you think that, given that he played almost the whole year, that he'll be able to take that jump that quarterbacks can take in between years 1 and 2 or 2 and 3 and come back a much better quarterback in the summer?
I think he can, I think the biggest benefit he'll have is, he played, I think, 12 games this year, of going through the same offense, being able to study the cut-ups in the offseason, and actually seeing himself in our offense and being able to improve from that. You can make improvements in the offseason just through the classroom. And especially because he's going to be watching himself on tape and not somebody else, that helps that process. So, yes, I do think he can come back better.
And then one last question. I'm sorry, Vic, one last one. Would you at all consider handing some of the game day play calling duties over to Ed in your year 3? Is that anything that you'd consider?
I think it falls under what I said before. Anything we can do from A to Z to improve, we'll look at and we'll evaluate and see if we think it's the best thing to do.
Thanks.
Final 3, Jeff, Eric, and Brandon. Go ahead, Jeff.
I think just a couple quick ones. Garrett mentioned yesterday he was going to take a trip to Mexico with his family. Were there any discussions about sort of off-season with COVID for the players about what they should do or what you hope they do or any of that?
Yeah, I addressed that in the team meeting that I had yesterday with the team, you know, they need to be cautious moving forward. The virus is still rampant out there. You know, we could see it every day. It's wreaking havoc in the NFL these last couple of weeks. It's still wreaking havoc in the NFL this week when there's only 14 teams still playing. So it's out there. It's real. And they need to be cautious. And I caution them to, you know, they've been in an environment where everybody they've been around during the day has been tested every day. And all of the cases we had in COVID this season were generated from outside the building and outside the team. So it's out there, and they need to be cautious and careful. And at their young ages, they can sometimes feel, you know, that it won't happen, or if it does happen, it won't be serious, but they need to be conscious of that they could give it to somebody in their circle that might be vulnerable to the serious side effects, and they need to be cautious of that. So again, I just reaffirm the use of masks, you know, try and keep the social distancing, avoid the crowds, and move forward with caution.
And just quickly, do you expect any surgeries for some of your guys? What do you have on tap here?
Yeah, Vince gave me the report yesterday. There's a couple guys that have some minor surgery scheduled, but you know what the definition of a minor surgery is? It's a surgery performed on somebody else. So it may seem minor, but it won't be minor to those guys. But we do think those things will heal in time and be fine.
Who are the guys, sir?
I think, you know, Austin's got a shoulder issue. He's got to get tended to. Michael's got a little knee issue. He's got to get tended to. Ojemudia. Those are the two that come to mind immediately.
Thanks.
Next one, Eric.
Two quick questions, Vic. First, you said some nice things about Drew Lock. Do you believe he can be quickly the starting quarterback for next year?
He can be. He can be. You know, he's going to have to improve, you know, which he knows. We all know. You know, we've got to eliminate the negative plays, and we've got to become more efficient and in our whole operation offensively. And obviously, as the quarterback, he's the leader of that unit.
As you are part of the interviewing process for the new GM, what would the challenge be if the new GM candidate doesn't feel the same way you do?
That's not a challenge. I mean, that's a new set of eyes, which is sometimes a good thing. You know, a lot of times when you are the guy and the coach is working with somebody, you feel a commitment and a determination to make it work. Sometimes a new set of eyes comes in and sees it different, or he may see it even more so. He may say, hey, this is the guy, let's move. So I think a new set of eyes and a new set of perspective is only going to be beneficial for that position and all of our positions.
Final one, Brandon.
Vic, I did have one. Now I have two. Which Austin is having shoulder surgery? Because you have two Austins.
Slotman.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. And then with this force out of the building because it's being cleaned up, but you still having to participate in these GM interviews, how does that change what you were trying to do? And then bigger picture, with the uncertainty about the league with OTAs and all that, how much does that change your planning? Or you just have to come up with a plan A, B, and C, and then pick the right one once the rules are in place?
Yeah, I mean, I told the players yesterday, I can't give them any dates for anything because nobody knows. And as soon as we know, they'll know. And I don't think you have plan A, B, or C. You have plan that you wait to see what the facts are, and then you make your plan. Because it's such a fluid situation. I don't think anybody can tell you what March and April and May are going to look like at this point. But as soon as we do, we'll have our plan.
Okay, Coach, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your professionalism all year and always enjoyed talking to you.